point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. I'm George. This is Tom.
I'm Tom.
And that's Tad, who we are not with, or we are with. This is Energy Week with George Harvey, Tom Fennell, and Tad Montgomery. So we're going to say hello to people who are watching this show on the internet, or who are, if it gets broadcast on Channel 8 at BCTV, we will just say hello to those tuning in. Tad Montgomery is our guest. This is George Harvey and Tom Fennell doing Energy Week with a special program on solar. And what aspect of solar are we dealing with here, Tad?
What I will be talking about is local home solar installations and how easy it is to do, to pay for, to finance, to make it work on your home, and the different options that are available. Home or buying into a community array.
Or buying into a community array. Okay.
So this is more than just technology. This is finance.
Yep.
Very interesting, very important.
And
Very
so,
important.
how much money do you need to get solar at your system? I had a fellow who wrote into Green Energy Times at the end of after our last issue came out, complaining that we should be talking about something that people could afford, and not just those people who have got an extra $40,000 in the bank.
So let me start with a bit of a case study that I have written up here and presented to a Dummerston Solarize committee last night.
Mm-hmm. Last night, so this is fresh.
This is fresh,
Okay.
Yes, hot off the presses. Tom, I don't know if you have the technology to do this, but if there's some way for you to have like a scratch pad and write down these different figures and numbers and amounts.
I could do it on paper.
And then post that so people can see that on the screen.
Well, you keep going, and I've never done it before. Certainly it's doable. It's doable.
Well, anything.
Do I know how to do it? No, but we're going to work on that.
Well, go over to close the thing.
That's just what I'm doing. Yeah.
So while Tom's figuring that out, I will start with the number crunching and sort of the explanation for how solar works at a home level. And what we'll focus on to start with is just you have a home with a south-facing roof, or your garage has a south-facing roof. It's got clear access to the sun, no trees or shading. The roof is not made of slate. It's a new roof. So assuming all those constraints.
Goodness gracious.
And that's a lot. That's not the majority of people. So we're sort of talking about one specific segment here of people who can do solar. And then we'll expand out and talk about other aspects of it in a second.
Okay.
And I'm going to start by describing how solar is priced. And it is dollars per watt. So imagine a solar panel, roughly 3 feet by 5 feet. Let's assume that solar panel has an output of 250 watts. So the sun is blaring down on that in the middle of a June day. This is the solstice, sunniest day of the year, and the panel is oriented directly perpendicular to the sun. Well, actually it'd be more like this on the solstice. That panel will produce 250 watts in those conditions. And that panel will cost, let's give it a price of $4 per watt. So $1,000, 4 times 250 watts gives it a cost of $1,000, installed price. Now, we could talk for a long time about this price, but that is roughly what we can now sell solar for in towns through Solarize programs. It's a discounted solar rate, but it's available to towns who are doing Solarize, which right now includes Westminster, Windham, and Townsend. We've got a big launch tonight in Townsend, a big kickoff event. So $4 per watt. And for more information on Solarize, go to solarizewindham.com, the website. But let's just start with that price. The average home to meet all of their energy needs throughout the year will require about a 5 kilowatt system. So that would be, if these panels are 3 feet by 5 feet and they produce 250 watts, that would be
20 panels.
20 panels. And that would cost $20,000. And what will happen through this wonderful process we have in Vermont called group net metering or net metering, you build up credits in the summer when there's lots of sun and it's shining, great weather, and then in the winter when it's snowy and the days are much shorter, you use the credits you've accumulated in the summer to get your electricity in the winter. Great
sort
program.
of like putting it in a bank.
Yes.
Exactly like putting it in the bank.
And you can carry that forward in Vermont for up to a year. And if you haven't used those credits in a year,
they disappear.
They either disappear, or if you're in old Green Mountain Power legacy territory, you get a check from Green Mountain Power for it. Okay, so we've got a system, $20,000. Now there's a state incentive that's available only through the end of this year, which is 25 cents per watt installed. 20 kilowatts, 20,000 watts times 25 cents per watt comes to
$5,000.
No, 1,000.
25 cents per watt. Yes, I'm sorry. You're right.
$1,250.
$1,250.
So that comes off of that $20,000 bill, right off the top. And you have a subtotal there, and that subtotal, you can now take 30% of the cost of that as a federal tax rebate. And that rebate is good until the end of 2016.
So these are cumulative.
Yes.
It's starting to add up.
It is starting to add up. That comes to, that federal rebate is $5,625. So if you subtract both of those from that first, the gross cost of $20,000, you have a net cost of $13,125. Not all that big an amount to get your electricity.
A small amount compared to the cost of a new car.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about financing now. The bank that I like to work with, both through my home energy advocates and through Solarize Windham, is actually not a bank, it's a credit union, the Vermont State Employees Credit Union. And I like to work with them because they have bent over backwards to develop loan programs to help people do clean energy work in their homes. VSECU. And they have a special program called the Discounted Energy Improvement Home Equity Loan. It's just one loan product of many, one bank of many, but just as an example. And there are a number of different products in this home equity loan program. One of them is a 15-year loan. It has a 4.5% interest rate, no closing costs.
14, what was the interest rate?
4.5%.
4.5%.
You have to have a loan to value ratio of greater than 80%, so, or less than 80%, so greater than 20% equity in your home.
And 20% equity of $13,125?
No, this is in your home. You
oh,
have
in your
to,
home?
Yes.
In your home, so...
It's just a way of qualifying you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a way of qualifying you for this lowest interest rate that they have in this product.
Which means, and I would imagine most homeowners have got that.
Depends if someone's refinanced recently, taken a big hunk out to do repairs, they might not. Or if home values have decreased substantially, which happened since 2008, they may have lost a lot of the equity in their homes. With Vermont Yankee moving out, home prices might go down in this area.
There's a lot of reasons why a person might not have that.
Yes.
Still, my guess is that a large majority of people who own homes have got 20% plus.
Yes.
Now, if they don't have it, they might still qualify for the loan, but
With
pay
a
more money,
higher interest
pay
rate.
more interest.
Yes.
So it's still a good deal.
Yes. So I'll talk about this one, and with that, the monthly payment on that 15-year loan for that $13,125 is $100.41. Now, so keep that number in mind, $100
I've got it
basically
written down.
per month. Let's take the benefit that the solar array will deliver at today's prices for electricity. To get that, we'll take that 5 kilowatt array, and there is a conversion to go from the 5 kilowatts to a projected number of kilowatt hours that array will produce in the average year in Vermont at this latitude with our weather. And that is roughly 1.18. So that comes to 6,000 or so kilowatt hours per year that array will produce, this $13,000 array. Multiply that not by the retail rate of electricity, but by, which is 14.9 cents per kilowatt hour, but the retail rate plus what's a 6-cent solar adder, as it's referred to, which is the premium that Green Mountain Power, at the urging of the Vermont legislature, is offering anyone who puts solar on their homes. And a little footnote we can take up later is how that really benefits everyone.
It actually reduces the power costs for people who are not in the project.
Put a footnote on that and let's come back to it.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make that clear right at this point.
So it's actually the benefit per kilowatt hour paid to a homeowner is 21 cents, roughly 20 to 21 cents.
So let me get this right. If you're buying power, it's 15 cents. If you're selling power back to them, it's 21 cents.
Yes.
That's right.
That sounds like a good deal
And
to
that's
me.
guaranteed for the first 10 years that array is in production. After that, who knows? The legislature, Green Mountain Power could do very different things. It could go up, could go down. We don't know. So multiply those together, and the annual benefit from that array is $1,254. Now let's divide that by 12 to get...
Repeat that,
$1,254.
$254, okay.
Divide that by 12 just to get the average benefit per month, and it comes to $104.
Ooh, you're making money.
Yes, so by putting solar on your roof, taking a loan out to do it, you're actually coming out ahead. And that's at today's electric rates. Electric rates are not going to stay the same today as they have been. They traditionally go up about 4.25% per year.
Although we're taking a cut this year, it's not because the price of power is actually going down.
No, and we took a cut last year also.
Yeah.
But historically, the average inflation rate for electricity in Vermont is 4.23%.
And we can somewhat safely assume that will happen in the future. It's not a bad bet.
It's not a bad bet. It might go up more.
It might go up less. It might even go down. But what we're talking about here is not huge amounts of money when you're talking about 4.5% of $100.
And what that inflationary figure basically means is that the benefit is going to increase.
Probably.
Because you're offsetting what today is $1,254, but next year will be $1,254 plus 5%. So add another 7 cents.
And by the end of your 10-year term,
$70 per year.
It's conceivable that you would be 50% higher.
Yes.
So
the savings dramatically increase through the life of this project of putting solar up.
Right. Now, let me get this straight, Tad. What you're saying is, I haven't heard anything about a down payment on the array.
No down payment needed.
No down payment.
This is
so you
fully
don't have,
capitalizing it.
Okay. If you have
loan.
your own building, your own house.
As a south-facing
Actually,
roof.
it could be a business building too, couldn't it?
Business is a different calculation. There are other things that come into effect that actually make it much more favorable to do this as a business.
But just any kind of account where you've got a building that you can go to the SECU and talk about would be a place where you could work on this kind of arrangement. But if it's for an ordinary homeowner, the home, there's no down payment. There's just a matter of going through the paperwork and being in contact with the Solarize Windham or another Solarize movement.
Or another solar installer.
Yeah, there are Solarize movements all over Vermont going on right now.
It has to be a Solarize happening in your town.
For you to get that.
The advantage of it.
Okay, so Solarize Windham, the town of Windham,
yes,
which is being done by Solarize Windham, the county of Windham,
yes,
would be just good for, and we should have a Solarize Brattleboro in order to get everybody in Brattleboro to be going on a thing like this. There is one in Putney
and
already.
we have tried.
Mm-hmm.
And we should try again.
We will try again.
Yeah, we will try again, even if we are like myself in an apartment. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for the town, for one thing, because among other things, it means that the local money stays local.
Yeah, and we're creating local electricity production.
Yeah, which creates local jobs.
And keeps money locally that would be going up to Quebec for Hydro-Quebec otherwise.
Right. Okay, so let's get back to this. What this means is for the average homeowner who has got probably more than 20% equity in his home, there's no down payment. And if you've got a Solarize movement going on in your town, which is actually going on in 3 towns in Windham County as part of Solarize Windham, and I think there may be another town in Windham County that's also got a different Solarize movement going. Is that correct?
Well, there's a number of other towns that I'm actively talking with.
Okay.
They include Dummerston,
Okay.
Newfane,
Okay.
Wilmington, and Dover.
And Dover. Is the Solarize Putney thing still going, or is
No, that was a limited time thing and ended June 30th.
Okay, so it has ended, but it could be restarted too in case more people want to get involved.
It's definitely possible to do iterations of Solarize over many years.
Okay, and this sounds like a fairly, it actually sounds like a no-brainer.
Well, there are a couple things.
Okay.
One, you have to have a setup where you can do this, a roof that's facing the right way.
Okay.
With the right kind of shingles on it and is ready for solar.
Right.
Another is a lot of people in our culture don't know how long they're going to be living in their house.
Right.
And that is a factor not only in putting up solar, but also in how much effort should I put in weatherizing and insulating my house.
Yes.
We don't yet have the PACE program adopted.
Right.
Hardly anywhere in Vermont, definitely not in Brattleboro. Property Assessed Clean Energy is a special loan program that the loan stays with the home, not with the homeowner. So when someone sells the house, the new owner takes on the responsibility of paying off the loan. Great program, and there are some hurdles we still need to get over with it.
Now you pay off that with your taxes or something at the same time
It's
as your
like a
taxes?
tax. Yes. Yes.
It's paid with the tax bill.
No, it's a separate bill.
It's a separate bill. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's paid to the town.
No, it's paid to Efficiency Vermont.
Boy, I don't know what I'm talking about.
And this confusion is part of why PACE has been so cumbersome to get off the ground.
It's paid.
And then who has responsibility? If it's a PACE district adopted by the town, supposedly things come through the town has responsibility for collecting on defaults, but the money never comes through the town, so where is the real responsibility in that? And that's where it's stuck now. But let's leave PACE for
let's
another.
Do that. I've made a sufficiently large fool of myself.
Complex program, few people really understand it well.
Yeah, especially town meeting reps.
Especially town meeting reps. But so one answer to people who say, I don't know how much longer I'm going to own this house and live here, is that there are ways to calculate the increased home value for homes that have solar put on their roofs or in their yards. And the Sandia National Lab has come out with a calculator for this, where you can just plug in your state and your latitude and your weather pattern and a couple other parameters and how big a system you put on your roof, and it will tell you approximately how much increased value the system will present to your town,
Now,
to your home.
If I could stop you for a second here. We've already established that there's no down payment. We've already established that your electric costs go down. And now you're
total
telling
costs
us
go down.
Your total costs go down. Well, I think of them as electric costs, but yes, your total costs go down. And now you're telling us that in addition to that, we're getting equity, which
Yes.
is almost like getting free equity.
Yes, it is. And that can be like 2/3. I've seen it, roughly 2/3 the total cost of the system. So a $20,000 system times 2/3 is about $13,000.
Which is the amount that you are paying for the system.
Yes.
So you're getting a $13,000. It's almost like getting money for free.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is the way I wanted to start this conversation about doing solar at your home, on your roof. In Solarize Windham, we do roof-mounted systems, and we also do ground-mounted systems. Ground-mounted systems, unfortunately, through the company that I'm working with, are more expensive. There's just more work that goes into doing them. You have to dig trenches from the system back to the house, to the box. It's more complicated, more labor-intensive. They cost more. The company, by the way, that I'm working with to launch these, the primary partner is RGS Energy. It came out of a merger between Real Good Solar out of Ukiah, California, and SolarWorks that was founded in Montpelier in 1980. So it's got roots in Vermont that go back a long time. And RGS, their ground mount systems are more expensive. And there are a bunch of other things that can add cost to these systems. And there are some things that can decrease the cost. If you have a large demand in your home, the cost per watt could come down substantially. With the Solarize program, there's also this tiered pricing structure that drops every time certain thresholds are met in terms of how many people sign up to do solar in the town that's doing the Solarize. So we start in Westminster, the start-in Solarize price is $4.10 a watt. As soon as 25 kilowatts are signed up, roughly 5 households, that price drops to $4.05. Another 25 kilowatts signs up, it drops down to $4 per watt. And it can drop down to from $4.10 down to $3.90 if over 25 households sign up. And that may not sound like a lot, it's just 20 cents per watt, but the savings for the average house is about $1,000. And that's, in a nutshell, how Solarize works. If you want more information, I just recommend people go to the solarizewindham.com website and encourage your town to launch a Solarize, whether you're in Brattleboro or Dummerston or Guilford or wherever this is being viewed. Get on the phone and let your select board know you want this to happen, because these are good rates, and the rates may not last. And I'll talk about that
But it
in a
doesn't
minute.
have to go through the select board, does it?
Doesn't have to, but it really gives the whole program a lot of clout if it
Right.
does.
If a group of people wanted to do this just on their own, they could do it.
Yeah.
So they don't need any town support. If the select board says we're not in that business, then a group of people could say, well, we are.
Correct. The thing that's very important, one of the things that's important with the Solarize is to get the endorsement of some trusted entity in the town, whether that's the select board or the energy committee or the United Way of Windham County. It could be any kind of large, well-established organization that has the ability to look at the parameters of the Solarize and say, yes, this is a good program. We stand behind this. People should do it. Select boards so far have been very leery of making that statement with our program, Solarize Windham. But what they have done, the 3 towns that have launched so far, is the select boards have said, yes, we acknowledge this program happening in our town, and just leave it at that. And some towns are extremely grateful and enthusiastic, and others are somewhat standoffish, and we'll just see how this works as it plays out. But that's enough for us to move ahead. And then we gather a group of volunteers from the town who want to see solar happen in their town, and those volunteers are the ones that make it known, that spread the word, like bring it into the schools and the churches, and have presences at town gatherings and county fairs and those sorts of things. And that's what drives the Solarize PR process.
Now, is Solarize just for people, or is it something that a church, for example, or a school could take part of?
The problem with a nonprofit entity doing solar is that they don't get the state and federal tax benefits.
Okay, well, what about Joe's Barber Shop?
Businesses, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. So they could be part of the Solarize
Yeah.
movement. They could actually take part. They could
Yep.
they could reap the benefits of this, and that could include some large companies.
It
too.
could. Yep.
So that if you've got, for example, a Pepsi-Cola bottling plant,
Yep.
they could be involved in this, and in effect be the organization that everybody else comes to join into, because they could take it on by themselves, I should imagine, and just say everybody's welcome to join who wants to join.
I've never heard of that, but I see no reason off the top of my head to
It
say
could be
that
some very good PR.
it wouldn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, right? And as you said, a lot of this is stuff that any solar installer could bring to a customer. It doesn't require a Solarize movement, although the lower rates from the Solarize movement are something that is very likely to be important
Yeah.
to anybody who wants solar.
Yeah.
Why reinvent the wheel? It's there.
Yeah.
It's out there for you.
Yeah, it's there. It gives you an advantage in the market, in purchasing. So what about a person who's in the shadow of a mountain?
Let's say they live at the base of Mount Wintasticate, though that would be New Hampshire, wouldn't it?
Let's say that they live in a lot that's always shaded by tall trees that their neighbors just love and belong to the neighbors.
I would be hard pressed to ever recommend that people cutting down trees to put up solar. That it seems to me just robbing Peter to pay Paul
But
on
there's
some
a
level.
solution to that.
Yes, there is, and
don't
it's
need to do
called
it.
community solar.
Yeah.
And with the Solarize programs that I'm launching, we actually include a community solar option, where an array is built somewhere in Green Mountain Power territory, and people, homeowners or businesses can buy panels in that array. The array is perfectly sited, the panels are perfectly oriented to maximize productivity, and you just buy as many panels as you want. You can buy enough to offset your entire home or business's demand, or you could buy just one panel. It's completely up to you. The cost of that is I'm working with the Clean Energy Collective on this, which did the array up in Putney a year ago on Route 5. And that is $3.75 per watt. Again, we were talking about the cost of solar being dollars per watt. The difference with the community arrays is that you don't, the buyer does not get the state and federal rebates. It's done through a very complicated equity finance model where another entity really buys and builds the system, and people buy into that with their purchase of the panels, and then it's sort of the ownership transfers to those people over a period of time, all very diligently laid out in the contracts that handle this. But the long and short of it is that the federal and state rebates are not captured. They do not come off of that $3.75. So the price is substantially higher than doing it on your home at that $4 per watt range. One footnote on that is that they've just announced, this array in Putney with the Clean Energy Collective, that their production this past year, the first year of operation, exceeded their projections, their expectations, by 47%.
That is impressive.
Yeah. We're still trying to figure out, and I'm in touch with the engineer who designed that system, and we're just trying to, like, why?
It's because somebody installed the philosopher's stone. You're making, it's like making money out of thin air.
Banks do that all the time.
I suppose they do, but people don't usually do it by buying solar panels. This is very good news.
It's great news. And what it means is that people can now buy basically 2/3 of the solar panels they think they're going to need to offset their entire bill. And it will cover their whole bill if the same trend continues. So that $3.75, if we take 1/3 off of that, comes to $2.50 a watt. And that's getting down below the cost after rebates for the home installed system. We can't yet guarantee that that same sort of production level will continue, but there's another large array in Putney, the same size, 150 kilowatt array, and that array only had about 3% increase over expectations in the first year of operation. So there's something about this Clean Energy Collective model that is working way beyond expectations, and very economically feasible.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Really nice.
And people can contact me if they want proposals for buying into these arrays.
Now, what about people who are not homeowners?
Same thing. You can buy panels in this to offset your electric account with Green Mountain Power, and then if you move, you just have that switch to the new place where you're living, whether you buy or rent in a new location.
In other words, the first option that you were talking about, which was putting it on your own house or property, roof-mounted or ground-mounted, is really only available to people who have property.
Yeah.
But the second one, going into the solar array, is available to anybody, and as long as that person lives in the Green Mountain Power area, the production of that array is going to be credited to that person's account.
Yeah, so the big caveat there is it really makes sense for people who are committed to living in southern Vermont for the next, as long as it takes to pay off the loan for this system.
However, when you can sell that.
Technically you can, and it's legally and logistically easy to do that. We have no idea what the market for that is because it's never been done. Nobody's ever sold panels in a community array before.
Although we can assume that market will eventually materialize.
Yes, no reason for it not to.
And the solar panels that you buy on these things are yours.
Yes.
You're not buying a share into something that's only going to last 10 years or 20 years.
Correct.
And those panels, this is one of the things that I find really interesting. People treat the numbers as though those panels will last until the warranty period ends.
Right.
But in fact, what we're seeing is that those panels last a very long time,
yep,
beyond the warranty period. And the numbers that I saw from France, where they were talking about the first grid-tied systems in France that were put in 1992, is that 20 years later, they were still producing 93 or 94% of their original output, which means that if you invest in this, and you maintain that investment, and you live in Vermont, and you do this as a young person who is raising a family, you could leave that investment to your children, who could leave it to their children, whose children could benefit from the investment that you've made 100 years hence.
Yeah. By the way, the Clean Energy Collective community solar model that I'm working with, they guarantee production of this array for 50 years.
That's an impressive warranty.
Yeah, 50 years.
50 years, which means I'm 67 years old, could assume that it would last longer than I would.
You'd be 117 years old, George.
I don't think I'm going to do that. But it would last until my Social Security is no longer being paid.
Yeah.
I'm joking about my death. Yeah, that is impressive. We had a footnote. Should we return to the footnote?
Sure. Which one? There's a couple of footnotes.
There's a couple of footnotes. One of them was about the cost of this to people who don't buy into the system.
Yes. So, George, you and I were at the joint hearing of the Vermont House and Senate Committees on Energy and Natural Resources.
That's correct, we were.
Back in March, I think.
I think that may have been.
And the vice chair of the House Energy Committee said at that meeting that through the efforts of conservation and small-scale distributed energy production, like solar, the state of Vermont has avoided $410 million worth of infrastructure upgrades to our transmission lines. Now, $410 million is not pocket change for a small state like Vermont. It's substantial, and it's because people are putting solar up on their homes and reducing their electric loads. So that's one
aspect of it. There's another aspect.
So, but basically, just to follow up on that and reiterate, by people doing this, everybody benefits.
Just because of that fact.
Just from that one particular.
Which means that you're avoiding costs being put on your electric bill.
Yes.
I'll tell you another cost that will not appear on your electric bill. The cost that you're getting, the price you're getting from Green Mountain Power by putting this up is 21 cents per kilowatt hour. Green Mountain Power sells that electricity for 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So it sounds like they're going to be making a loss, which has to be passed on to other customers.
Right, it
but
sounds that way.
In fact, that's not what is actually happening. What's actually happening is very different from that, because Green Mountain Power has to buy the power from someone. And that someone they have to buy the power from is very often, to at least some extent, selling based on the wholesale price, which is current in the spot market. And that is especially true during the times when you have peak load. And when there is peak load, those prices can be absolutely outrageous.
Astronomical.
Astronomical. It's mind-boggling. I know that Green Mountain Power was paying 60 cents a kilowatt hour during a cold snap. I think it was last winter. But I have seen the price of power go to $11,000 per megawatt hour. And I believe that comes to $110 per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
This wasn't in the United States, it was in Australia, but it was because a coal-burning 700 megawatt plant suddenly went offline. And the point that I'm making is there really is no cap on where that amount of money can go. And if you're selling power into to Green Mountain Power, you're going to be selling power that might otherwise have to be purchased at the wholesale spot rate. Most likely time to do that is during peak demand load, during the summer when the air conditioners are going and so forth.
Middle of the afternoon.
In the middle of the afternoon. And guess when your power is being produced?
By solar.
By solar. It's the middle of the afternoon on a sunny day. So the power that you're selling to them at 21 cents per kilowatt hour may actually mean that they're saving money. Right. Very often it will mean that they are saving money, but on any given day you don't know that. But the point is, it's not just something that has to be passed on to other people. It could represent a savings for other people. And that's something that you don't have to be apologetic for.
Yeah, right. If people understand that, they'll be very grateful that their neighbors are putting solar up.
Exactly, exactly. It keeps the price down. Between that and the fact that nobody has to pay for those infrastructure upgrades, that could be a very, very important force in stabilizing or even reducing the power bills for people in the state.
Yep.
There's another thing too, and that we haven't talked about, but that is that, well, I'm going to put that off. I was going to say that I think that it would be nice to put a minute or two into mini grids, which Green Mountain Power is pushing, and the fact that solar and wind can be important parts of those mini grids. But there was another footnote that you wanted to add, unless you want to continue with the one that we were just doing.
Tom, I think, asked, what about schools and churches and things, sort of nonprofit entities? And the community solar option is actually quite good for them because this other entity that is part of the development and financing of these community solar arrays captures the state and federal rebates and tax incentives. So the price drops down to this $3.75 a watt, which makes it favorable for nonprofit entities. They don't have to worry about not capturing those tax incentives.
They would not ordinarily be able to benefit from those incentives because
Right.
they're nonprofit.
Right.
But people who are buying into those things as individuals also don't get those incentives.
Correct.
In that system.
Yeah.
But they are benefiting from very much reduced costs in purchasing the panels and the installation. I think it's $3.75 a watt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these tax incentives are basically go to what I'll call a system operator. That's what they get out of this.
System operator.
The person that's putting it all together. The
Yes.
organization that's putting it all together
Yes.
is getting the benefit of those things, so they're not having to charge for their services as a
much.
separate item.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Makes some sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forget what the other footnote was.
I think that might have been all. I only remember two.
I think there was a third, but I didn't write it down.
Okay. We might talk about what I just mentioned, which was the idea of having mini grids.
Uh-huh.
Now it happens right now that Green Mountain Power is doing some very, very interesting research and development work, if you want to call it that, which is not hardware research and development, it's financial research and development. And they have a system that can also finance solar going through NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, where a person can buy into a solar system, including their own solar system, and finance that through NeighborWorks of Western Vermont and have the costs of that applied to put on their power bill. And it similarly can produce negligible increase or possibly a reduction, depending upon how circumstances are. And that gets paid off during a period of time, after which their bills go. And no matter how you approach this, once your solar panels paid off, your power bills go very close to zero. It's basically the connect fee. And one of the things that Green Mountain Power is currently doing with NRG, which I think is a New Jersey firm, is that correct, Tom?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, their headquarters in New Jersey.
Yeah, but they've got a system that they're developing in Rutland, which is a mini grid. It's not a microgrid that includes the hospital and the whatever else was up there, but it's a larger system, so that if there's a problem with grid power, the people in that particular mini grid will have a significant hope of maintaining their power system by disconnecting from the grid and using their local resources. And what they're hoping to do is to have this established throughout the entire state of Vermont. Which means if it happened in Brattleboro, for example, or if it happened in Dummerston, or if it happened in Guilford or wherever, if there's a local mini grid, when Hurricane Irene hits, you'll have damage almost everywhere, but once that local damage is cleaned up, you don't have to depend on the grid being active to get your electric power back. You can use your local resources.
I think the better example would be that ice storm that happened 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh boy, yeah.
Where the whole East Coast and much of Eastern Canada went out for weeks at a time in the middle of winter.
I was in Winchester, New Hampshire at that time, and we lost power at our house, I think, for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So this is a place where if those microgrids, or a situation,
Yes.
if those microgrids were in place, we'd have power back within
Yes.
probably hours
Yes.
of...
Yes. As a matter of fact, at my house, we had a power generator, and we were in business in minutes because we had, gas and could get power. And within a day, we were able to get in and out on the road, and I was always able to provide that generator with gas. And the generator was a complete nuisance because it made a lot of noise, but by golly, it kept the furnace and the refrigerator going.
Yeah.
And that was the important thing. And a mini grid could depend on diesel generators and things of that nature if it was necessary, but it can also get a lot of its power from solar and from
Batteries.
Microhydro.
It can get power from wind if it's got a wind input.
A whole bunch of people on bicycles.
I think that's maybe the best way to do it. Hamsters, yes.
Hamsters.
Let's do that.
On that note, a friend of mine, Chris Mason, is the Energy and Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Northampton, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And he told me recently that they are exploring developing a microgrid that would include a big solar array on their capped landfill, which is very close to the Smith Vocational Technical School, where biomass, I think methane digesters can be put in to generate electricity from their dairy farm as part of the student work. And their hospital is also right there in the same, and the hospital and the school both act as emergency shelters. So they're exploring this very actively as a microgrid within the city of Northampton that would rely on battery backup with renewable energy power generation.
Right. And here in Brattleboro, we have the Retreat, which happens to have 3 generators that are about 1/4 of a megawatt each. So they are capable of generating an amount of power that's similar to 3/4 of a megawatt, which is more than they normally use by a factor of 2. And they made special deals with the power company. What was the power company in Brattleboro? That was
CVPS.
CVPS. Always liked that company. I was disappointed when they were purchased by Green Mountain Power, and now I'm not so sure that there's a reason to be. But CVPS made a deal with them, and they could wind up being an important part of a mini grid in Brattleboro, and
certainly could
be part of the battery backup that could stabilize that grid.
And then there's a 2 megawatt or 2 megawatts up there on Putney Road.
Right, which
Solar.
is solar.
Yeah.
We've got more solar going in. We've got 1/2 megawatt that I believe belongs to the high school.
Oh, do they?
I believe
don't
that's
think I've even
correct.
noticed that.
I might be mistaken, but
Half a megawatt are under contract for both the town and the high school.
okay, it's under contract.
Oh, okay, I'm aware of that one, yeah.
Yeah. And then, we've got a lot of people who have got solar that can go on the grid. And the big problem here, and of course this is where the Solarize movement can participate in this perhaps. The big problem is, how do you organize all of this into a mini grid that can be stable and can or if you aren't doing that, and this is something that local homeowners can think about, if you've got power on your roof or in your backyard, what do you do about the power system going out? And how do you manage that? Because when the grid goes down, if you're grid tied, your system goes down with the grid, unless you've got a way of detaching from the grid and a battery system to back that up.
Yeah, and so far, I mean, sort of the beauty of the group net metering and the Solarize movement and just all the home solar that's happening is the cost is low because we don't need batteries.
Right.
It's not like an off-grid system that can be $60,000, $70,000. So it's a great thing that homeowners don't need to install batteries. Now, as you all well know, the cost of battery storage technology is plummeting, and there's huge energy being put into evolving that technology, and it's happening very rapidly.
Elon Musk putting $5 billion into a factory in Nevada is
For example.
Yeah, and it's only one example.
Yeah. Now, was that the plant that was going to go in Buffalo? They switched to?
No.
It's a different one.
This, I believe, is a different one. I might be mistaken.
it's Vegas.
But it was
Right
it
outside
was,
of Vegas.
Yeah, and they had 5 states in the Southwest that they were considering building this thing for, and it's not going to produce just batteries for Teslas. It's going to produce batteries for homes, for grids, for power grids, and so forth. And but the price of battery power, just this last week we had a 5 megawatt battery connecting to the grid in northern Germany. And
A 5 megawatt battery.
5 megawatt battery.
Well, that's bigger than the one in my car.
I think it is. But and interestingly, these batteries are not the only way to store power.
Well, we just saw them with the hot water and the
That's right.
hot air heaters.
That's right. And you've talked about using a reservoir in Brattleboro as a
Pump storage.
system.
Yeah,
and it's a
that can be
tiny
done
reservoir.
too.
It's a tiny reservoir, but that doesn't mean that it's completely insignificant.
Exactly.
So, and
it's not the kind of thing that's going to make an investor drool.
No. Well,
But it could be utilized.
it could be utilized.
And the piping's there because they used to pump Connecticut River water up there.
Yeah, and furthermore, we don't necessarily have to have batteries to have storage or pump storage. There's other ways of doing it, and the one that I think of as really kind of the simplest to envision is to use one of the newer technologies that people have to do hydrolysis, produce hydrogen, and then use the hydrogen to produce electricity, which could be done in a fuel cell. In fact, there are fuel cells that will go in both directions.
Both directions, exactly.
And
then there's the electric car movement.
the electric car movement with a distributed grid, you need a smart grid, but yes, you can do that. And there are a lot of ways that you can store power. And the batteries in the electric car movement, if you can get enough electric cars into a community and you have a smart grid, the investment that goes into that is done by the homeowners for themselves.
I did read somewhere where in some parts of the United States today, I think if you're running an electric car and you allow it to be used as grid storage,
Yes.
you actually make money every month.
Yes.
You'll get free electricity for your car and you'll get a small check every month.
Yeah. By buying power at night in 2 o'clock in the morning and selling it back in the afternoon. But this is all part of the business that we read about earlier of having 25% of our electric power worldwide coming from solar 25% of the world's power is going to come from Solarize Windham. And
You heard that here first.
right, and similar movements of all sizes and shapes elsewhere. So there you go. This is part, the world is changing. It's not going to stay buggy whips for the rest of the history of humanity.
Well, the way we generate, transmit, and utilize electricity is changing very rapidly.
Much to the dismay of Brothers Koch.
Yeah, but I mean, it's happening because it's economical. It's happening because it's wise.
Yes.
It's just basically a sound idea.
Yes.
And the old way of doing things is over. There's probably going to be some new ways of doing things we can't even think of yet.
Yes.
But it's going to change. It's changing for the better.
At the meeting in Dummerston last night, one of the people present was Michael Griffin, who's the husband of the pastor of the Congregational Church there. And I gave that same presentation about basically the cost effectiveness of a homeowner doing solar. And his jaw just dropped and he said, "Good news." There's some good news in the world. And like the whole rest of the meeting, he kept saying, "Wow, that's like great news."
Isn't it nice to know you can do that? Gentlemen, we're getting up to the end of our hour. So I think we should probably use the opportunity that we've got here of good news to say goodbye.
So Tad Montgomery with SolarizeWindham.com and Home Energy Advocates. Thank you, George, Tom, for having me on.
Well,
It's
thanks
been
for
a
coming.
pleasure.
I want you to come back soon.
If I'm forced, I'm happy to come back.
We've been trying to force you to.
Talk to my parole officer. Give permission.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, good night. You're going to see this many different hours.
Yeah. And I'm George Harvey. I hope to be here next week and talk with you all again. We spin and we toil, we work all day, sowing and reaping, we store goods away, so we can be dressed well on the day that we die. We dig and drill and waste what we find, break up the earth, leaving little behind, but we will grow lilies in the by and by. I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land so lovely earth can stay lovely still.